Okay, if anyone can hear me, can they write something? Because I've just realised I don't actually know if this is working or not. Haven't done one of these before, really sorry about that. So let me know if you can hear me and see me. Is that working? I think it's working. So I've got myself down in the corner on a different video, so I'm going to try and be able to see your comments there. Oh, there are people on my screen, that means it's working. Oh, I win. Okay. Cool. Sean's here! Thank you for coming, Sean. I haven't done this before. Not at all nervous or anything, but really glad you're here. Thank you for that. So, hi, my name is Liz. I live in south of England, in the rainy part, and the part that has no Wi-Fi. So if my Wi-Fi goes down and drops, then bear with. I'll try and pop back up again as soon as I can. Let me know if I'm too quiet or too loud or anything. Yeah, okay. So I think that's working. Yep, okay, cool. So whilst I'm kind of waiting for people to join and to give people a chance to kind of sign in, I'm just going to do some blindness myth busting a minute, just whilst we wait for people to start. So, blind myth busting number 1, blind people can't use phones. I am using a phone, so I'm talking to you, unfortunate people, sorry about that. We can use phones, we have adapted technology, we have speech to text, we have magnifiers on our phones, we have loads of adapted technology. It's fantastic. You know, the 21st century is the best time to be sight impaired because we have so many amazing pieces of equipment now. But unfortunately, I find a lot of people are too scared to use their phones in public because there's this huge stereotype and stigma that if you're sight impaired you can't use a mobile phone, and people actually face backlash from the public when they're going along with their white cane and then they get a phone out, and that's crazy. The adapted technology is there to be used, but we're too scared to use it because of what the public will say. So that's blind myth number 1 for people who are joining. Blind people can use phones and technology. If you see us using a phone, we're not faking. It's just that we have loads of useful apps on our phone. Blind myth number 2. If you're sight impaired, it means you see nothing at all. Really, really common misconception. It's actually quite uncommon for somebody who is blind or severely sight impaired to live in total darkness. That's actually much, much more uncommon. It's far more common to have what's called useful vision, residual vision, remaining vision, although that differs for everybody. Just going to check the comments. Sorry, if you're wondering what I'm doing staring down here, I have a magnifying glass and I'm reading my tablet to see what comments are. Oh, hi Hannah. So let's do blind myth number 3. You can't say, I saw this, I watched this, I saw this person, I read this. Yeah, you can. You know, I'm sight impaired, but I will sit down and watch the TV. My visual experience might be different to yours, but I'm still sitting down and watching the TV. People get really unsure what to say. They'll want to say to me, did you watch that program last night? And they'll come up and they'll go, did you see, no, I mean, did you hear of this program? And you think, well, I watched it. Yes, I saw it. I'm not going to be offended if you say, did you see this? You know, and it's, you know, it's common. It happens all the time. People don't know what to say. They're nervous. They don't want to get it wrong. I won't be offended. A lot of visually impaired people won't be offended. You know, we know what you mean. And it really confuses people when I say, I watched this, or yeah, I read that too, or did you read that study? Because I think, how did you read that study? Yeah, adaptive technology. It's fantastic, life-changing, in fact. Going back to sight loss and what you actually see, sight loss is a spectrum. Everybody's experience is different. I did have some resources made for me to show you. I will get on to my talk shortly. I just want to give people a chance to kind of sign in, catch up. So, for an idea of what people with sight loss see, I've got a few different examples. On one side, there will be a picture for 20/20 vision. On the other is an example of what a visually impaired person might see. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to assume I'm holding it up all right. There we go. So those are some examples of sight loss and what it looks like and how you see the world if you're sight impaired. If you're wondering what I see, so the reason this is difficult is because I can't see myself in this video, so I'm just talking at you and assuming I'm doing the right thing. This is what I see, this is how I see the world. So I'll try and remember what order they're in. On one side there's a picture of what normal people's vision looks like. On the other side is my vision with the same picture. For an idea of what I see close up for my short-sighted vision, this is what I see when I see people. So on one side is the clear normal vision and the other side is kind of what I see. And then the last picture is what I see kind of at night. This is, my vision at night is very poor. So that's my world. That's how I see the world. And up until 2 years ago, that wasn't the case. But I will get started with that in a minute. So, blind myth number 4. Having a guide dog means that you are completely blind. Again, not true. As I said earlier, the vast majority of people who are severely sight impaired or blind do have some form of residual or useful vision. When I say residual or useful vision, what I mean is blurriness, black patches in their vision but they can see in some areas. You might have a grey tinge to your vision and you only see very bright colours. But these are all considered useful vision, remaining vision. And blind myth number 5. Every blind person uses a guide cane and can read Braille. A really common one again. Braille tends to be more so for people who have been blind since birth or became visually impaired at a very young age. It's not impossible for people to learn Braille later on. I know some people who've done it. They're very committed. It takes years. I don't personally know Braille, so not every person knows Braille. But again, adaptive technology, we work around it, we work with it. And every blind person uses a guide cane. I hear this one a lot. It actually took me a very long time to accept that I needed a guide cane. And I'm not special. I'm not uncommon. That's not uncommon. That's not unique to me. A lot of people don't want to use a guide cane. That doesn't mean their vision is good. It just means that for whatever reason they don't want to have the guide cane. For me, personally, I fought it for a very long time because to me it showed loss of independence. It showed dependence on a piece of mobility equipment, and I wasn't in denial about my sight loss, but I didn't want it to be the first thing people knew about me was the white stick. Once I accepted that and started to learn with the stick, literally it changed my life. So I don't know why I put it off for as long as I did. I still don't like using it, but it's so much more helpful. I fall off curbs a lot less now. You know, it has changed my life. It was just a shame that I took so long to accept it and use it and stop caring what people think. Okay, so just check the tablet a minute. Okay, cool. So I've just checked the tablet. I'm still speaking. You can still hear me. It's all good. So with that, after some blind myth busting, I'm going to start my talk. So just before I start my talk, again, my name is Liz. I live in the UK. I lost my sight 2 years ago. In this talk, I'm going to use terms such as blind, severely sight impaired, visually impaired, sight loss. These are all interchangeable. What I mean is that my sight is impaired and I'm actually classed as severely sight impaired, which is the fancy new label for blind, but I won't be offended if you call me blind. Some people prefer sight impaired, visually impaired. You can call me what you like. So I lost, well actually before we do the sight loss bit I should probably go back a little bit. There's a little bit of backstory. In 2012 I had a horse riding accident. Pretty traumatic head injury. There's never a good head injury, but this one was quite spectacular. I fell off a horse, I landed on my head, landed on the base of my skull, flipped 180 degrees, landed on my face. The force of the impact broke my riding hat into 2 pieces. But I am incredibly lucky because if I hadn't had my hat on, I wouldn't be here. That 2 pieces lying on the floor would have been my head. So always wear a riding hat if you're riding, even if you trust the horse. They are big flight animals, they're unpredictable, and they will always save themselves. Unless you've got a real diamond of a horse. But anyway, 2012, had a head injury. The head injury resulted in seizures. I've suffered with seizures for several years now. It's part of my normal. They're debilitating, they're exhausting, they're painful. I injure myself a lot. But that's sort of a part of the parcel of having a head injury and dealing with the effects afterwards. I was also left with multiple chronic pain conditions, and I have a condition called chronic daily hemiplegic migraine. So anyone who's had a migraine knows it's not just a headache, there's a whole lot more to it than that. I have something called hemiplegic migraine. Hemiplegic means paralysis. So at any point my face will drop, I will lose the sensation and the feeling in my arm, I will lose the ability to use my arm, and it looks very much like I'm having a stroke. My speech slurs, my face drops, I lose the use of one half of my body. I then tend to have a seizure, but that can happen at any time. So if during this presentation my face starts to drop, I stop making sense, I will log off, I'll go do my thing, have a seizure, I'll try and reschedule the live. Sorry for the inconvenience if that does happen. That's my normal. So that was what happened as a result of the head injury. And it kind of sets the scene for how I lost my sight loss, how I lost my sight. The The other thing with the head injury, I have a processing delay. The wrong words come out sometimes. It's not intentional, it's just I get a bit mixed up sometimes, so if I'm talking and I'm not making sense, not me, it's the brain cell. Tends to happen as well when I'm stressed or nervous, which is today. So, 2 years ago, it was the first day of my holidays. I woke up in the morning, everything had been normal the night before. When I went to bed, everything was fine. I woke up in the morning, I'd clearly had several seizures in the night. I put some of my joints back in, because that's normal for me. I have a condition where my joints subluxate and dislocate. So I woke up, put myself back together, thought, my eyes are a bit funny, you know, oh, I'm really tired, so I rubbed my eyes a bit, got up, bumped myself as I went through the doorway. I thought, oh, that's annoying. And I remember walking down the corridor and bumping myself on either wall, bumping myself multiple times as I went down the corridor. And I remember thinking, has this corridor got smaller since last night? I didn't think anything of it. And then I got to the staircase and I put my foot out on the top step and I fell from the top to the bottom of the stairs. And as I sat in a heap on the bottom of the floor, looking up at the top of the stairs, thinking something went wrong there, I realised I couldn't see the stairs. And that was kind of when I realised that my sight had completely changed overnight. So that was the first day of my holiday. Ironically, not very relaxing. And then it resulted in lots of going backwards and forwards, seeing lots of ophthalmologists, lots of consultants. It wasn't a straightforward process. Sight loss generally isn't. But there was no indication I was going to lose my sight that day. There was no previous warning the night before. It just happened. And I've since learnt that I'm not special. I'm not unique. It can happen to more people than we would comfortably accept it happens to. So when I kind of finally got the diagnosis of sight impaired, again, it wasn't a quick process. If you put 4 different consultants in a room, the only thing they'll agree on is that I am a headache. There were no obvious answers, and I get it all the time. How did you lose your sight? I don't know. That's the short version is we're not sure. The slightly longer version, and this is the theory they've decided on, is that I've had seizures since 2012. It's normal for me to have seizures every night and during the day. And seizures are an extremely traumatic thing for your brain and your body to go through. So when I had my horse riding accident, I lost my sense of smell. And they're pretty sure that the link is that I'd had a lot of seizures in the week running up to my holiday, more so than normal. And I'd had seizures the nights that I lost my sight, and so their long-standing theory now is that I lost my sight because of the prior head injury and because of the recurring seizures. The way I was told that I'd lost my sight was, and it was probably permanent, was the consultant came in, he said, well, I can see from all of your tests that you're clearly severely sight impaired, but there's nothing I can do for you, so all I can suggest you do is that you go home, you try and stay positive, and you have a happy life. So that was how I found out I was severely sight impaired. That was how I was told. There wasn't any support, there wasn't kind of any signposting to organisations or charities. And again, I'm not unique. This happens every day in the UK. People lose their sight. And I guess the shocking figure really is that in the UK at this moment, over 2 million people are experiencing visual impairment in their daily life. And a recent study showed that only 17% of people who live with sight loss feel that they received appropriate emotional support to deal with their diagnosis. 17% of over 2 million people isn't a great statistic. So that's why I wanted to do this talk, really, because I think we can change that. I'm really passionate about education, and I'm really passionate about animals. And so that's what I want to try and put together, because the one thing that got me through my sight loss was my dogs and animals. But actually, if I hadn't had the prior knowledge of the animals that I work with, I would have really struggled to train them prior to my sight loss. So what I want to try and do is raise awareness, make adaptations more accessible, and my aim for the reason for this talk is if I can get one person to look at their training or their business or their venue and think, I can make this more accessible, that will be a positive for me. I would have done my bit that I've come here to do. This isn't going to be a depressing talk. I'm 2 years into my sight loss journey. I'm still considered a newbie. You know, I've not done this since the beginning of my life. You know, I'm a newbie to this, but I'm 2 years in. Everybody's journey is different, and I'm in a place where I feel I can share my story. And if I can share and it helps people, that's great. But also, I guess the important thing to say here is that sight loss is unique to everybody who experiences it. Everybody's journey is different. I use a warped sense of humour to get through mine, but not everybody's able to do that. I find laughing gets me through a lot. Being able to laugh at myself as I go along helps a lot. But what I want to try and do is make this an inclusive place. I want to be able to make visually impaired people feel more comfortable when attending dog training, because there's a trainer who says, yeah, that's fine, you know, I've got adaptations, I've thought about it, here's how we can do this. And I kind of want to give you a scenario initially. So imagine your phone pings, you've got a message on your business page or an email, and you open it and it says, hi, I would like to attend your dog training class. I'll be coming to dog training with my new puppy. Just so you're aware, I am visually impaired. Now you're probably reading, yep, puppy, fine, can attend class, fine. And maybe if you get to the end and you see sight loss and you go, oh, I don't know how to deal with this. That's okay, that's absolutely fine. And it's an acceptable response. Because what you tend to find is unless people have a family link or a friend, or they're going through sight loss themselves, there's just not that awareness of how to cope with it and how to help. That you just don't have that access, really. So that's what I'm trying to change. Because until 2 years ago, I didn't know very much about sight loss either. I thought every blind person had a guide dog or a guide cane. How wrong was I? First, a cup of tea, I think. Just whilst I'm trying to read some comments. So I guess my first thing is, you're probably thinking, how is she looking at the camera? She's told us she can't see. She's told us that she can't see her face in the mirror and the reflection. So how is she doing this? Well, this is my first kind of blind hack. I'm afraid I'm not actually looking at you or my face because I can't see either. What I'm looking at is this. It looks like Lego. It doesn't hurt if you stand on it. It's a sticky back plastic sticker. And these are tactile raised stickers. I don't know if I really hope you can see these, otherwise I'm just going to look like a fool. So I have these all over my house. They're on my cooker to tell me which dial corresponds with which for the hot plate. I've got them to tell me the temperature of things. They can be on the washing machine, the tumble dryer, you know, all the different, wherever there's a button and you need to differentiate information, you can have a button. So what I do if I want to cook safely, I have two buttons. I have one on my cooker and I have one on the dial, and I will turn them until I can feel the buttons are aligned and correspond with each other. So that is how I'm looking at my camera. There's an orange dot on my phone case. That's how I know where to look, because otherwise my eyes tend to drift this way and I tend to lose focus, and my eyes don't really know what to focus on, so they tend to wander. So I am focusing on an orange dot right in front of me. The next thing I want to share with you is probably this one. I don't have to explain what this is. Everybody knows a clicker. What I love about this one is that it's raised. It's another tactile button that provides feedback. But what I love about this is that the elastic fits on a finger. You can do it under your foot and do it with your foot instead. Or, bear with, here's one I prepared earlier. This elastic fits over your guide cane handle. Now, as a visually impaired person who is a guide cane user, when I want to go out, I end up having my stick in this hand, always in this hand, my dog in the other hand with her lead, I've got my treat pouch, and if I wanted to add a clicker into this, it then gets very complicated. I do not have enough hands. So if I can fit this over the handle of my cane, that is a game changer. And the brilliant thing is, if you have somebody who is a guide cane user come to your sessions, that they're fully aware of what they can and can't do, and their limitations if there are any, and their adaptations. They're very, we are very good at adapting to a situation and how to adapt specific activities. But if you don't have the knowledge of dog training, you wouldn't know about clickers or different clickers. You could use a marker word, but sometimes you need a clicker. And maybe if you're in a class and everybody's doing clicker work and you're told, don't you worry about a clicker because you won't be able to do it with your stick, you're not included. So if you as a trainer can say, hey, we're going to do clicker training, this is a clicker, it fits on the end of your cane, you're immediately going to feel included in that session, and you're going to know that your trainer or your behaviourist has already thought about your adaptations and how they can make it inclusive for you, and that is an amazing feeling. So the next one, you might just think this is a simple wooden spoon, or is it a target stick? Yeah? How cool is that? So now you could use a target stick like this. What tends to happen though is, because these are plastic, this red ball on the end is brilliant. It's easy to see if you have residual vision. However, as soon as you start using the telescopic function, you lose feedback, and that's what you're relying on. So your dog could touch it lightly and you won't feel anything. So you won't be marking and rewarding your dog when they're offering the behaviour because you can't feel it. Whereas if you've got a magic wooden spoon and you're holding it, you can feel every slight tap. You can feel the feedback. This is just fluorescent duct tape. You can buy it online. And the reason I've put vet wrap on the handle is because it's really good for grip. It's fantastic for grip. It's easy to hold. And again, it's brightly coloured. And so this is just, it's a simple wooden spoon, but it does transform training. And the other reason I can recommend this is I use this. I'm a part-time wheelchair user because my joints dislocate, and they like to do that for fun whenever they feel like it. So if I'm in a wheelchair and I'm trying to do target training or teaching heel work next to my chair, I'll have this, and it will, because of the length of it, it stops the dog moving under your wheels in a wheelchair. I'm not going to talk about wheelchairs too much because Tasha and Briar are covering this. So yeah, it's a wooden spoon. But if you pull this out of your bag when you come to a training class and say to somebody who's visually impaired, I've thought of this adaptation for you, can we give it a go? That means that you've thought of them already, and that's an amazing feeling, to find somebody who's not only accepted your sight loss, but is actively trying to make you feel welcome. Fantastic. So keep one of these in your bag. It's just a spoon, but the other reason I put fluorescent tape on here is it's much easier to see. Not just for me, for everybody. So to give you an example, you know, you lose that spoon immediately until you turn it round, and then it's much easier to see from a distance. So yeah, gotta love wooden spoons. Just have another tea break. Read some comments. Hi Ruby, I've just seen your comment about assistive technology. I covered it right at the very beginning when I was doing some blind myth busting, but I will cover it again at the end, or I will, at the end of this video, I will film some of my adaptive technology and then I'll put it on my events thing if I can work out how to do it. I can't show you how to do it now because I'm using my phone. I don't want it to turn off because I've done something stupid. So the next one is a lot of people have probably seen these on cyclists. This is just a bicycle cuff. It's a fluorescent cycling cuff. It's elasticated and Velcro. It does have some LED lights, I believe. I don't know if mine still works. There is a button somewhere. It does have flashing functions. You can also get collars like this. I find these very useful because if I'm trying to do a downstay at distance, I very quickly lose where my dog is. My range of vision is very restricted, so they have to remain in front of me. But as soon as they're more than less than a metre away, I see very little of what they're doing. So if I put one of these on my dog, I know what I'm looking at and I know what I'm looking for. So you could have one of these in your training bag, and if you're at training class you want to do something like a downstay at distance, you could say to your client, we're going to be doing downstay at distance. What it entails is you put your dog in a downstay, you walk a metre away, and then you walk back and reward them. But you could say to them, this is what we're going to do. I've had an idea. Would you be prepared to try one of these on your dog and see if it helps you see where they are? You know, it's just a suggestion. They might say no. And actually, a lot of visually impaired people have bells on their dog already. I know a lot of guide dogs wear bells on their collar. So they might have already brought an adaptation, and that's fine. But again, another suggestion. So it's a cycling cuff. You can buy them online. They come in packs of 2. They do flash, but it's what we're looking at is this bright reflective material that you can see from a distance. It will help you see your dog, especially if you have a darker coloured dog. They're much harder to see. I'm very lucky. I have 2 dogs. They come in white and orange. I didn't choose that. I chose them before I was sight impaired, but that was a good choice. So they're easy to see. But if I had a black dog, I would really struggle to see them from any distance, especially at night as well. Just quickly, if you guys have questions, carry on writing them in the comments. I will get back to them at the end, and I'll try and answer as many as you fire at me. Let's have these next. This feels a bit like Blue Peter. Here's one I made earlier. You guys can see the colours I use the most. These are all duct tape. You can buy them online. Just type in fluorescent duct tape. These are fantastic. So I have these all over my house. I have them to mark out shelving and tell me where shelving is, because otherwise I open the cupboard door, the shelf will be here, I can't see shelves, so I smash my mugs into them and they all end up chipped or broken. Which is a bit unfortunate because I have a lovely mug collection. I'm very proud of them, but I keep breaking them because I smash them into the cupboards because I can't see where they go. So these are fantastic. You can mark them out, you can mark out boundaries, you can mark out levels. You know, in terms of health and safety in your venue, if you can mark out where steps are, that's fantastic. You know, mark out where the entrance to your venue is, mark out your steps, mark out a ramp. You know, it's just trying to do your best to help people who can't see, but also it's, you know, health and safety is always a bonus to mark out any trip hazards. A lot of people have rubber matting and kind of stable matting, or the click together foam flooring. But have you considered that where the foam flooring ends, most people can see that, but people who can't see that, that's a trip hazard. But they might be able to see it if you put tape around the corners. The other thing you can do with this tape is, here's a scenario. You're going through your class, there's one sight impaired person in your class. The exercise is that you're doing obedience, you're getting up with the dog, you're walking in a 20-metre square, and then you go and sit down again. You get to the visually impaired person and you go, we're going to do walking in a 20-metre square. Off you go. Well, me personally, if somebody said that to me, I go, where? What is 20 metres? You know, how do I work that one out? Reimagine the situation, but imagine that before people have turned up to your class, you know that you've got a visually impaired person in your class. So you've arrived early, using this tape, you have taped out a square on your flooring. When it comes to the exercise, you say to people, follow the orange square. That's 20 metres, you're doing heel work. When you get to the visually impaired person, you can say to them, I've marked out an orange square for you. Just to see, you know, and obviously a lot of this depends on whether this person, what range of residual vision they have left. But it's another idea. You know, I'm trying to give you a toolkit of ideas and hints and tips, so that if you ever get that email that says, hi, I'd like to come to your class and I'm visually impaired, you can go, cool, okay, we can work with that. Because how people's attitudes kind of dictate how a session is going to run and how your relationship begins. And, you know, if you turn up to a class and they kind of go, I don't know how you're going to do any of this, you immediately think, oh, that's not a great attitude to have. You know, you immediately feel like you're being excluded because they're not willing to think about what you can and can't do. They've just decided you can't do any of it. If you turn up to a session and they go, you know, I'm really pleased to be spoken on the phone, you know, that here's some ideas that I've come up with to enable you to partake in the sessions. You know, let me know if any of these will work, because the whole purpose of this is communication. That's the important thing. Is just communicate, because so many people are scared to communicate with visually impaired people. It's crazy. You know, we're just the same as you. It's just that we've got dodgy eyes. You know, my dodgy eyesight doesn't stop me being a normal human being, you know. So it's just another solution. It's just nice to feel that somebody's considered you and tried to make things accessible and inclusive. That changes everything. If you know that somebody's put in the effort before you even turn up and is armed with a magic spoon and all these ideas, it's fantastic. It changes everything. Just quickly, you can also buy these you can buy tactile flooring tape. So when you go to cross a road and you find those bumpy sections just before a crossing, those are there for visually impaired people. But what you can buy online, good old internet, is tactile flooring tape, just to make surfaces different, break up surfaces. So yeah, go and have a Google. You'll be amazed what you can buy on the internet. And let's talk about, okay, everybody knows what these are. You're probably thinking, what have dogs' toilet bells got to do with anything? I want to give you a scenario again. So imagine you're the visually impaired person. You have very little residual vision. You've made it into class. This is your first dog training puppy class with your new puppy. You're sat there, minding your own business, waiting for it to start, and all hell breaks loose and the puppies are going nuts. And all puppies are barking, it's pandemonium, these classes often are, and you don't understand why. You don't know what's happened, because your vision hasn't shown you what's happened, you can't see. So you know you're in a situation that's unfolding, but you don't know what's happening. What's happened is that you're sat there as a visually impaired person with your puppy. The other people in your class are sat with their puppies, and the venue door has opened and somebody has come in. So all of the puppies have started barking. You as a visually impaired person, you don't know that because you haven't got that feedback. This is where the bells are useful. So if you've got an indoor venue, you can put these on the inside of your door. So what happens as a visually impaired person is the first time you come into any new situation or scenario, you are listening to everything around you to try and build up kind of a mind map of where you are and what's in this room, what's going on around you. You're constantly listening to everything around you to try and take it in. You're working out how many people are in the room, how many dogs are in the room, where's your dog, where can you sit. There's all these sorts of things going on. But imagine you open the door and you hear, as you open the door, you're going to, that straight away, that's an indication there's bells on the door. And you take that in and you map it subconsciously. You may not even think, cool, there's bells. You just open the door, you hear the bells, and it's lodged in your brain. So when you, as your puppy, as the client, go and sit down with your puppy and you're minding your own business, the next time you hear the bells, you'll think the door's opening, so you can prepare your puppy. You can get their attention, you can feed them treats. You can control the situation because you know what the situation is. So it's amazing what bells can do. You as the trainer don't need to say, hey, I've put the bells on the door just for you because you can't see, so I've put them there so that you know what's going on. I wouldn't have that conversation because although it's come from a lovely place, some people would consider it positive discrimination. Positive discrimination is when it comes out of a good place. It's a kind act. Somebody means well, but by pointing it out into a room full of other people and making you, the obvious intended person for this remark or this action, it's positive discrimination because, it's a really kind thing to do, but it makes, if somebody said that to me, hey, I've put this there just for you in a room full of people, I'd be thinking, oh, thank you, but now you've just pointed me out. I was trying to, to be included, and now you've just made it very obvious. So just put the bells on the door. You don't even need to have that conversation that, hey, I've done this. If the person mentions it, you can. You can mention why they're there, and they'll really appreciate it 9 times out of 10. But maybe just don't do it in front of a room full of other people. It's a little bit embarrassing. No one likes to be pointed out in a room full of whole room full of people. Let's see. Just quickly as well, going back to the tape. If you have an outdoor venue, or you've got a grassy field, or that's where you train in your classes, if you can, try and kick in any divots, smooth over molehills, try and make the surface as flat as you can. If you can hire rollers to roller the field. So if you can make it as flat as possible, that's fantastic. That really helps. The other thing you can do is if you're thinking this is a really good idea but I can't do that outside, I can recommend spray paint, the ones that come in the cans. People use them for graffiti, but you could use them to spray out a circle or a shape, a triangle, circle, square, whatever you prefer. You could put them on the ground. And I think you'll be surprised how many sighted people find them useful as well. It's just something I picked up along the way. I'm just going to try and read some comments. Sorry. For those of you who didn't start right at the beginning and you're thinking, how is she reading comments? Giant magnifying glass and adaptive technology. I'll be back in a second. So those are kind of my training aids, my suggestions. before I go on to the next bit, what I would say, again, just to stress, I am a visually impaired person with what's called useful remaining vision. If you missed the start of this, I'll show you again what I can see. So this is classed as useful vision. So that's what I can see at night. There's a picture of a face which is normal and blurred. The blurred is what I see close up. So that's what I see when I look in the mirror. I can't see my face. And that's kind of how the world looks to me. Just want to point that out in case anyone missed it and you're now thinking, how is she reading comments and looking at the camera and what can she see? So again, as I said at the beginning, an awful lot of people, well, the vast majority of people who are sight impaired do have some remaining useful vision. So a lot of my training aids are working on the basis that they may be able to see bright lights and colour. You're just trying to make things as bright as possible. Having said that, when you next go into your venue, please look at your lighting. Do you have natural lights? Do you have a lot of light in your venue? Is it well lit? Are there darker areas that need some lighting? Do you have a dodgy light in the village hall that you hire that flickers constantly? Because if you do, please make a note of that to get that fixed before your next class. Because not only does a flickering light trigger migraines, seizures, and a lot of other, it can be really overstimulating. It's also incredibly difficult as a sight impaired person to work in a room where the light is going lighter and darker and lighter and darker and lighter and darker. You've got enough going on trying to hear your surroundings and work out what's around you without a light going on and off and on and off and changing what you can see the whole time. A lot of people who are sight impaired who have very little residual vision, if you can imagine kind of having a very dark, like there's kind of a veil over your eyes, but you can see flashes of very bright light. That's one thing that some visually impaired people rely on. But if that light is flickering, it's very hard, it's really distracting, and it's really hard to kind of work out where you are in proximity to other things in the room. So again, keep writing me comments and questions. I'll answer them at the end if I can. The next bit I want to talk about is how you can make your business more accessible. You've seen the training aids. Now let's look at your venue as a whole. And before you even get to the venue, let's look at your website. As I said in the beginning, I have adaptive technology in the form of a screen reader. Anything that's on my screen will be read aloud to me from my phone. I also have a massive magnifying glass on my phone. So I put it over any text, it magnifies it to I think it's times 68, and I read one letter at a time and I read going along like this. So let's talk about websites and Facebook pages. They can be the best thing that sell your business, or they can be my idea of a nightmare. So the first thing I guess is on the front page of your website, does it state where you're located, your radius that you will travel to, and if your venue is accessible? Because I rely on a screen reader and it goes one by one reading along every tiny thing on a page. If I have to go through 7 pages of a website to find out your location, the chances are I'm just going to quit and not bother because it's not accessible. If I find a business or a Facebook page who have tagged right at the top that they're a trainer who doesn't use punishment and they're based and this is their location, I'm more likely to go absolutely, because I've learnt these 3 things just from the top of their banner or from a pinned post on Facebook. And so I immediately know whether I can continue reading or whether I should just stop because they're miles and miles away. So that would really, really benefit people who use screen readers or magnifying glasses. Because although I can use adaptive technology, I'm constantly straining my eyes to try and do so. So I end up with really horrific migraines trying to use social media and use technology and making, you know, if you can make my life easier, that would be much appreciated. Think about the text on your website. You know, is it a really busy page? Is it nice and clear and bold? Have you used fancy, like, italic fonts that are hard to read? Have you used bold, clear font that's easier to read? Think about the colours of your website, because a lot of colours are great, but it's then very hard to read text over them if you're using magnifying glass. Accessibility. Does it say on your website, I train in a village hall which has a wheelchair ramp, which has a step at the front entrance? You know, does it have a flight of stairs to get into the venue? Because if you turn up to this venue in a wheelchair and you find out you can't get in because it's up 6 flights of stairs, you know, it's really frustrating for everybody involved, and you've just lost business. If you state on your website, my venue is wheelchair accessible, and you can, well, the entrance is via 1 step, but the fire exit has a wheelchair ramp. You know, just these little things that will immediately attract customers, because there's a whole different client base there that you may not have thought of, but it really matters if you've put these things on your website. You're much more appealing. Do you have pictures of your venue? I know I'm a visually impaired person, and you're probably thinking, what's with pictures? If you use a magnifying glass, you may be able to see. You may have somebody who can describe it to you. You may have, you know, pictures are brilliant. You can never have enough pictures of your venue, because pictures provide an awful lot of visual feedback if you can see the picture. Which brings me on to my next thing. If you are going to put pictures on Facebook or your venue, please include a photo description. So what happens with my screen reader is I'll be listening to a trainer's page. They've posted a picture and they've said about an amazing training class that they've done, and there are all these dogs there and this and this and this, and then they'll say, as you can see in the picture below. And I immediately, that's the end of the narrative for me, that's it. And you kind of think, oh, I wish I could have known what the picture was. If you put a picture description on that says, amazing class, some lovely dogs, really great handlers, as you can see below, and then have a picture description which says, pictured here are 3 dogs, they are sat on the floor staring up at their handlers who are offering them a treat. That builds a picture, it builds a story in your mind. But it also, if people are including these things, you think that's brilliant because they're accessible. You know, they've made the effort, they've put in this extra description. Now, the majority of people are probably thinking, why have you put that in? But to the people who need it, that means the world, because you already know, just from that picture description, that that trainer offers a service and they are accessible and they're accessibility friendly and they've thought of you. So that's another thing to remember for Facebook and websites. If you're going to put a picture up, remember to put photo description and briefly describe the picture. Another thing, going back to your website. Actually, you know what? I'm going to have a cup of tea first. Bear with. And read some comments again. So back to the websites. I am really fortunate to be friends with a lot of really amazing trainers and behaviourists and things like that, but just quickly before this live, I tested my theory. I went on as many different trainers' websites as I could off the top of my head, and not one web page has the offer of the online initial form in large print. Nobody had it, which immediately for me as a visually impaired person makes me think, oh, that's it then, I can't join the class because I can't fill out this form unless I spend hours over a few days really straining my eyes through a magnifying glass trying to fill out a form. I could get somebody else to do it, but you know, you end up relying on people a lot. It'd be much quicker if the form was in large print. You could print it off or do it on your thing via speech to text. So the way it works is I tap a button on my phone, I speak into it, what I'm saying appears as text. That's how I fill out most forms, and that's how I have a blog. That's how I write on social media. I'm not writing, I'm sat speaking and it comes up. So if you can offer your form, all of your forms, in large print, again, that shows that you've thought of the visually impaired community. I mean, the other alternative as well is just to put a thing on your website that says, if you would like help filling in the form, ring me and we can do it over the phone. Because not only is that useful to visually impaired people, you've then made your website and your client, you've expanded your business to include people with dyslexia, you know, sight impaired people, people who maybe cannot read and write, because there are still people in, you know, who cannot read and write, and that's absolutely fine, it's acceptable. But if you really want to join a job training class and you had to go on the website and fill out a form, that puts you off. You know, you as a trainer may have to give 10 minutes of your time to a new client over the phone, filling out the details on their behalf, but actually you've just gained 10 minutes of your time, you've gained a client who otherwise may not have had help training their animal. So it's just another thing to consider. After this, maybe go back and look at your Facebook page and your website and see if it is accessible. You know, look at the font, look at whether you can change your online form to large print. And you'll be surprised, you know, again, over 2 million people in the UK live with visual impairment. That is a huge amount of people. And visually impaired people have pets, and they would like help training pets. You know, we're just the same as everybody else. We just have the dodgy sight loss. You know, we just got dodgy eyes. So it would really, really make you stand out from everybody else as a trainer. You know, your business stands out if you've thought of everything and thought of everybody. And I think that's it. I think I've thought of everything. I'll just try and have a look through here. I've got a thingy here just to check. So I'm just going to try and read through some comments now and see what people are saying. If you guys have got questions, now's the time to kind of put them down here and I'll try and answer them as best as I can. But remember, I'm just a one person. My sight loss experience is a different journey to everybody else's. You know, everybody's journey is different. So I'm just trying to share general hints and tips that could help the community kind of as a whole in general. But yeah, I'm just going to read some questions. Now's the time to write them down if you want me to answer them. Okay, so there's a really good question from Sean, who I think has had to shoot off, but I'll answer it anyway. She said, if somebody came to your class who was visually impaired, would it be rude to ask what their impairment was? I think it was. Would it be rude to ask what you can do to help? Absolutely not. The only thing it would be rude to do is completely, you know, brush over the fact they had a visual impairment and try and carry on as normal and pretend that it didn't exist because you weren't sure how to handle it. The best approach you can have is to communicate, because if you open that line of communication, you know, it's not rude. We would, you know, I personally, I can't speak on behalf of the whole visually impaired community, But I can say that from my experience, I would far rather people asked than assumed or tried to kind of just ignore the whole issue completely. I would far rather, if you had that, think back to the email, if you sent the email and you'd said, I want to come to class, I have this puppy, but I'm visually impaired, and somebody replied with, that's absolutely fine, we can talk through adaptations and how best we can, how we can make the classes suit you best. That would be a perfect response. Or we can meet up and kind of discuss adaptations you may need prior to class starting. It's that, as a visually impaired person, would show me you were willing to work with me, you valued me as a client. And people who are truly accessible, it's like a needle in a haystack. People are really hard to find. So if you can find somebody who accepts your condition and is willing to work with you and has already come up with some adaptation ideas, the chances are that client will stay with you because you are invaluable to them. It's really hard to find people like that in the world, in general, in life. But dog training, as a visually impaired person, if you're coming to class, the chances are you may have little information about dog training. So again, with the clicker on the cane, you may not know that. So it'd be fantastic if a trainer with their knowledge of training and the equipment and training aids can adapt it to you. Someone's just said that they're going to look at their website and they're going to spend the whole afternoon editing now because they've realised that the text is too small. Fantastic. That means I've done my job. That's all I wanted to achieve in this live, was make people more aware. Again, I don't want people to see my sight loss and go, oh, you poor thing, that must be really awful. I don't want pity. Nothing like that. I just want to raise awareness, because sight loss is just a very small part of who I am. It is a part of me, but it's not the whole part of me. It's not just the only thing you see about me. And I find that a lot. People, unfortunately, when people see me coming, this is all they see. And as soon as they see this, they think, oh, a blind person. They don't just think, oh, it's just a person, just like you and me. The only difference is faulty eyesight. They just see this. And it panics people, I think. I think it genuinely panics people because they don't know how to respond or react. So going back to question, there was a question I was asked to answer before the live, so I did keep it down here so I knew to answer it. They said, how did visual impairment affect my training? It would be a real oversight on my behalf to say my training hasn't changed since my sight loss, because it has. It doesn't mean that it's better or worse, it just means that I have to be aware of different things. So I will, in all honesty, a whole lot of dog behaviour is very small micro behaviours, and I may not notice them, I may not pick up on them, but dogs are very good with body language, so you had to become kind of more aware of body language, and it's made me a much better trainer in that respect, because I have to really focus on them so I don't miss all those tiny micro behaviours. But also things like, I've realised if I want to watch my dog and see the reaction to something, I need to sit down, because I'm just that much closer to them and they're much more closer to my eye level. If I'm training something with a target stick, things like that, I just need to make sure that I'm sitting down as close to the dog's face as possible, or the dog's feet, or the dog's nose, whichever targeting we're doing, I just need to be as close as I can be. So a lot of my training I do sat down instead of stood up, just because of the distance between me and the dog. I brought myself down to their level so I can see what's going on. But yeah, does it affect my training? Yes. Doesn't make me a better or a worse trainer, it just changes things, because the world that I live in looks different. That's the change. One thing I have noticed is I now have a much better understanding of reactive or fearful dogs, because I haven't really spoken about what my world looks like or anything like that, but as soon as I step out of my front door, I can't control my surroundings, and every time I step over that threshold, it is terrifying, to be honest. You know, and the world around me changes so quickly. I can't see cars, I have no depth perception, and I don't see movement very well. So cars are a real danger. So the minute I step over the threshold, I'm already trigger stacking, because I can't control my environment. I can't control my surroundings. How many people am I going to see? Are they going to respect my space? You know, what am I going to run into? And I have to constantly be listening around my surroundings. And it's just, you know, even if I've chosen to leave my house to go somewhere that I enjoy, it's still a really stressful, overwhelming, exhausting experience, because I can't rely on my sight and I have to rely on everything else, as I have to be hyper aware and hyper vigilant. And I think often that is how reactive dogs and fearful dogs feel as soon as they step over their house, their threshold, and go outside. So it's kind of given me a different insight into dogs. I understand how they feel. But yeah, in some ways it's helped my training. Oh, somebody asked what I thought of a Cocker Spaniel as an assistance dog. So for background, I don't have a guide dog. She's the wrong height, the wrong size and the wrong weight. I do have an assistance dog. She's a Cocker Spaniel. What do I think of them as assistance dogs? She's phenomenal and she's everything I needed and more. Would I recommend them? Not unless I knew the person specifically. I wouldn't recommend a high energy working gun dog line unless I knew the specifics of that person. I very rarely, on assistance dog groups, I very rarely recommend them, just because I don't know that stranger on the internet. I would, if they're saying spaniel, I try to naturally divert them to show line, just because I don't know their disabilities, I don't know their health, I don't know their limitations, I don't know their personal energy levels. But I know that I have a working line Cocker Spaniel, and she's a phenomenal working dog, but she would be somebody's nightmare as a pet. So for that reason I try and change people more towards show spaniels if they're saying spaniel. If they're not saying spaniel, I say kind of Labrador, Retriever, Poodle, anything like that. The standard, the Fab Four they're called, but lots of people have covered assistance dogs. So yeah, Cocker Spaniels, brilliant in the right homes, but I wouldn't recommend them necessarily to anybody. I don't think there have been any more questions, so I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for joining in. You know, I haven't done a live before, but that actually wasn't that terrible. Just before the live I was thinking, what's more scary, doing a live video to strangers on the internet or going blind? And I thought, well, I'll think about it at the end. Actually, I still think going blind probably is more terrifying than a live, but I'm glad I did it. You know, I've tried both, so I can now say for sure blindness is not recommended. And before I go, I guess there's only one other thing to say, which is don't ever miss your eye appointments. Don't, you know, please don't avoid them. I know they're annoying and they take up time and you're really busy, but you know, don't miss. Well, don't miss your optician's appointments, please. They can pick up things that you didn't even know were a problem. But yeah, I think that's it. If anyone has any questions, just type them on here. I'll reply. If anyone wants me to look at their website and give them feedback after they've changed it, just message me on Facebook. But yeah, thank you for joining.